Welcome to another edition of the Inspired Stories podcast, where leaders share their experiences so we can learn from their successes and be inspired by how they've overcome adversity. My name is Anthony Codispoti, and today's guest is Conor Murphy, managing partner of Big Night Fitness at Big Night Entertainment Group. Conor helps bring high-energy workouts to nightlife venues, allowing anyone to experience the excitement of fitness classes enhanced by incredible sound and lighting. Big Night Fitness is on a mission to make exercise fun and accessible by merging professional-grade instruction with the atmosphere of a nightclub. Launched in 2021, Big Night Fitness soon gained attention for converting closed clubs into dynamic pop-up gyms throughout Boston. Under his leadership, the company has expanded rapidly, hosting everything from HIIT classes to specialized dance and cycling sessions. Conor is a certified CrossFit trainer, firefighter, and many other things that we're going to hear about today. And he spent over 7 years at Reebok, where he honed leadership and coaching skills. Now, before we get into all that good stuff, today's episode is brought to you by my company, Add Back Benefits Agency, where we offer very specific and unique employee benefits that are both great for your team and fiscally optimized for your bottom line. Imagine being able to give your restaurant employees free access to doctors, therapists, and prescription medications. And here's the fun part. The program actually puts more money into your employees' pockets and the companies too. One recent client was able to increase net profits by $900 per employee per year. Results vary for each company, and some organizations may not be eligible. To find out if your company qualifies, contact us today at addbackbenefits.com. All right, back to our guest today, managing partner of Big Night Fitness, Conor Murphy. Thanks for making the time to share your story today.
Appreciate you having me on.
Okay, so Conor, let's go back. Early days, what first sparked your interest in fitness?
My parents were really involved in fitness in different ways than I am now, but both my parents were bodybuilders when I was born. And so the discipline of fitness and training to be a better athlete at a young age was instilled upon me from my parents. Being a younger, smaller, skinnier kid growing up, realizing that the only advantage I was going to have later in sports was going to be discipline and training, was really what kind of caught my passion. It wasn't just like, hey, I want to be fit for nothing or fit for life. It was, I need to be the best at these sports. And this was the only way that I really had control over it, rather than, you're playing a sport against someone else. You can't control how fit they are, but you can control, how good you are at your respective sport and training. So I think that's probably where it started at a young age from my parents.
Okay. Did you spend some time in the Navy?
I did. Yep. Yeah. I enlisted right out of high school. That was another big part of it, training to be in Navy Special Warfare, which is something, it was a huge challenge. It was something I always wanted to do. So the training aspect really got highlighted during that training and then afterwards as well.
How did that experience plus, all of that rigidity, that structure of physical fitness from your youth kind of play into the way that you approach leadership today?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. The rigidity of training was very different from how I grew up in high school. I was kind of a hellraiser for my parents. About the only thing I did right was stay focused on the gym, but always wanting to make my friends laugh, always getting into trouble, usually on the innocent side of things, but sometimes I probably should have thought twice before some of my actions. So I think the Navy was actually really what I needed. Rather than trying to go to college to play sports, it was having that rigid structure. And then once I was able to translate what I was doing in training to everyday aspects of life, I think most of the modalities that I preach and that I live my life by in business have come from training and discipline from either the military or from an actual physical fitness aspect.
And you spent 7 years at Reebok as a team leader. What did that role entail?
So I actually think it might have even been closer to 10 years. I originally, because I was competing in CrossFit, I got sponsored by Reebok. And then after 6 months, they had asked for me to come coach at their headquarters in Canton, Massachusetts, which is just south of Boston. And I started off just as a coach, then went into a manager position, then team leader, and then actually the head of the whole gym. So kind of the health and wellness of Reebok. And that was one of those things where I probably got into roles before I was mature enough to be there, and kind of learned the lesson the hard way of what it took to get to that point. But I think that from a management side of things, when all of a sudden the people that are your peers are now looking to you for expertise in management, you have to be a little bit more professional. And that's where I kind of learned. I've always been a big kind of, I'm not going to ask you to do anything that I haven't done. And I think climbing that ladder in a natural, organic way was a good way to do it, where anyone that I was asking them to do something, it wasn't something I wasn't either currently doing or have done before or wasn't willing to do.
So can you give us a specific story, an example of when you were not mature enough for the role that you were put into?
Oh, yeah. I got a good one for this. So I was a trainer, right? I was just a coach. I was a full-time coach. They like to bring athletes in there. We would compete for the Reebok team at the CrossFit Games. And all of a sudden, the people in charge of me, so Austin Malleolo, who was the head of gym for a long time, and then Denise Thomas, incredible leaders, incredible managers, they were unavailable for this big, they call it a retailer summit. So in Las Vegas, they would have every retailer that Reebok had globally come in. They would all fly in, and we would have all of the retail, anything that we were going to be selling for whatever the following year or 2 years products were. They would come pick out what they wanted for their specific markets. And they would run this big fitness event. And when I say big fitness event, I mean 5 groups of 250 different people that were all retailers. So we had, 1,000 plus people that were coming through this fitness event. And instead of just me being a coach, coaching my portion of it, I was actually in charge of the whole thing. So there were celebrity trainers from all different aspects, from running, from Pilates, from CrossFit, from everything. And my job and role was to be in charge of it and run it and make sure everything went smoothly. And I like to have a good time with my friends and family. And the night before that event, one of the heads, I think he was the VP of, I think maybe the whole business. We went to the UFC fight, and I told my boss at the time, Austin Malleolo, I was like, I'm not going to have a drink until, after this event is all set. And, I played the role. These trainers that I look up to were now looking up to me to have everything set. So I was playing all the roles, making sure everyone was all set. We went to the UFC game, or the UFC match, and this VP was like, hey, you're going to have a drink with me. And so I said, okay. And the next thing you know, we were at the blackjack tables with the CEO, the president of Reebok. And we went to a nightclub where, and this is kind of where like the celebrity training aspect comes into it. And one of the DJs that was playing there, I knew from just training experience. And we had gone back to this nightclub, Hakkasan, that Reebok had rented out previous to the UFC fight. But now it's nightlife. It's probably 2 or 3 in the morning. And I'm with the CEO of Reebok. I'm with the president of Reebok going in there. And he was like, hey, we have these stamps. We rented out this place beforehand. And the door guys are like, hey, you can't come in with with tennis shoes on. And so he's like, hey, I rented this whole place out or whatever. And some guys walked in that were wearing similar attire to us. And he's like, well, why are they able to go in and we're not? And they were like, they're on the DJ list, so we don't have anything to do with that. And I was like, oh my gosh. Earlier that day, the person who was DJing there was like, hey, I'll throw you on the list. Come say hi to me. And I was like, hey, I'm actually on that list. And they're like, no, you're not. I was like, I am Conor Murphy. And they look at it and they're like, show me an ID that says Conor Murphy and you guys can come in here. And I showed them my ID and they were like, all right, you're in. And from that aspect, the president of the company is
You're
like,
looking pretty cool.
Oh yeah. And that was like, I was the coolest. That's the coolest I've ever been. And the president is like, how can you get us in here? And me not, drinks are on me tonight and we're going out and we're in the DJ booth with the DJ, and John Jones, who got back his title, is in there. We're all having drinks together. He was a previous Reebok athlete. So everyone's having a good time. And about 5:30 a.m. we leave, and I'm going back to my room, and I'm being somewhat responsible. Like I wasn't, I remember everything and being like, all right, I'm keeping an eye on my watch. Sent a message to all the trainers at 6 a.m. that, hope everyone's up. Everyone had a great night. Here's where you're going to meet. And I was supposed to go to the venue early. the team I was going to go to the venue with, they had an issue the night before, so they were already gone. So they messaged me, hey, just come with the trainers at 7 a.m. It's like, okay, sounds good. So it's, maybe 6 a.m. at this point in time. I'm back in my room, set an alarm on my phone for 6:45. That didn't happen. And so I wake up at 8:30. I have about 70 missed calls on my phone. Ends up one of the other, senior leadership team of Reebok had to step into my role. Felt really silly about it. I think anything went off pretty well without any major issues, but I had to spend the rest of the morning. I woke up just in an absolute panic, like there's no way this is happening. I tried to get to the venue. The cab driver didn't know where to drop me off at. The event was already over. And I had to go talk to every single leader that saw me as this like Reebok athlete, kind of fun party guy that was supposed to be in this professional setting, and be like, hey, I dropped the ball. I messed up on this. And I had to just like own all of these mistakes. Denise and Austin were so disappointed that this was like the one shot for me to prove that I'm not just this, I can be in another scenario. But I somehow survived that event. I think by failing fast. I think by not making excuses. Hey, I was out with these guys the night before. It was
you just owned it. You're like, this is on me.
I didn't need to tell everyone the story of who I was out with and then put blame on someone else. It was like, it was my responsibility to be there. I made every choice in that night and I messed up. And that was one of those ones where it was...
That stuck with you, I'm guessing. That's probably affected how you've made other decisions going forward.
For sure. And listen, I can talk about this now as if it was kind of a funny event, but I was in a panic. I was talking to the travel team being like, all right, you got to send me home early. I got to find another job. I'm working for the CrossFit training team so I can focus on that and then work at another gym. And I mean, I was panicked and it was so embarrassing. No.
They kept you?
Nope. They kept me and they kind of laughed it off. They gave me that year in 2015 what they call the Lindsay Lohan Award. I don't know if there's like a trademark to that or if I'm going to get in trouble for saying that, but in Las Vegas, Nevada in 2015 at the Reebok Retailer Summit, I got the Lindsay Lohan Award, which I was not proud of at the time, but now seeing it as such a big learning lesson for me as someone who wasn't necessarily the most professional person to realize that, hey, in these settings, you've got to be able to lock in and not be the person. If you want to be at this level, you can't act as the person as everyone sees you at. And,
Powerful.
If I would have made it that morning, maybe been a little bit hungover and everything went off, it was only a matter of time before I was going to learn that lesson in the future.
You think you needed to fall on your face like this?
100%. Absolutely.
Whether it was that time or something that would have happened in the future.
Well, if I wouldn't have learned it then, and I realized that I got away with this, I was the cool guy, everyone looked up to me for that, what's going to stop me from doing that in the future? And then just keep going down that rabbit hole until it happens where the event doesn't go off well. I don't show up and the event doesn't happen, and Reebok looks like a joke in front of their global retailers.
Yeah. Okay, so where did the idea to start Big Night Fitness come from?
So with the celebrity training side of things, I had a couple of DJs that I trained.
Okay, well, hang on, let's back up. How did you get into celebrity training?
So I always tell this story when people ask. I have a friend, his name is Mike Finn. He is a tour manager, and he was working with kind of hardcore punk rock, smaller bands, and then worked his way up to an artist named Dylan Francis. And before that, I would send him some programming. He's from Natick, Massachusetts, so we would work out. We became friends. And once he started training Dylan, he introduced us. We went out on the road, nothing for training, just to kind of hang out. And then at another tour, we went out and we all did a workout outside of the tour bus. And Dylan came out at that point in time and was kind of making fun of us for, doing CrossFit workouts. And I was nervous, but I was like, hey, Dylan, like, if you want to do a workout, we can do like a quick 10-minute bodyweight workout. I promise you'll feel better afterwards. And I think on the spot, he was just like, okay. And so we went into one of the green rooms. I put him through a quick little workout, worked on his squat position, just air squats and burpees. And 7 minutes later, he found himself out of breath, laying on his back, being like, what the heck happened? Day later, he was like, I'm sore, but I feel great. I'm paying these trainers in LA to train me for 2 hours, and I've never felt like that before in a 7-minute workout. I've never felt better about a squat. My knees don't hurt. And that's how I got into the music industry. And even though it's just one artist, you can't market yourself as a celebrity trainer. You can't just say, "Hey guys, I'm a celebrity trainer," and celebrities go, "All right, well, I'll come train with you then." It's all word of mouth. It's being a trusted source in the industry. And so with Dylan, he was a good friend of mine and such an awesome guy that when he would see results, he would post about it on his social media. Other artists would reach out to him, and, I would get cold calls from artists being like, "Hey, I'm in this Boston area. I want to train." But what happened was he was in town and he was playing at one of these big night entertainment group venues, the Grand. And it's about a mile, like 1.2 miles from the Reebok headquarters in Seaport. The headquarters had moved from Canton into Seaport. And he came by and worked out with me before going to his like pre-show dinner with all the big night guys, played his show. And then a little bit later, an artist, Steve Aoki, came into town, kind of the same concept, had heard of me from Dylan, and he reached out about training. And so when Randy Greenstein, one of the co-owners of Big Night Entertainment Group, messaged Steve saying, "Hey, we're going to do dinner at Empire," which is one of their kind of Asian cuisines, high-end restaurant venues in Boston. He's like, "Hey, we're going to do dinner at Empire at 10, and then we're going to do the show." And Aoki says, "Okay, cool. I'm just going to train with my guy at Reebok before heading in." And this was the second time Randy had heard about it. And so he's like, "Who's this guy at Reebok?" And these were the two guys. Like I didn't train a whole slew of people. Like it just happened to chance to be these two guys. So he came down, we worked out, and we ended up working out a deal that I got about $10,000 of pro mat from the store. So the headquarters store was right next to the gym. So we would put together this one pager that was sent from Big Night to all artists saying, "Hey, if you want to get a free outfit from the store and private training from this trainer, you can utilize this service." So now they're reaching out to people for me because it creates this wellness and health aspect of a hospitality company that may not, and definitely at the time wasn't there before. And people were taking advantage of it. So they would come in, get an outfit, we would work out, and then they'd be like, "You got to come to the show, come to dinner with us." And that's when I think I do well, is where you can sit down and have conversations with people and not be so quick to talk and tell your story, but really listen to their stories and create these genuine relationships where they're going to reach out to other people that are coming to Boston. "Hey, you got to meet up with this guy. You got to train with this guy." And that's kind of the start of Randy and I's relationship, who then had conversations with his business partner, the other owner of Big Night Entertainment Group, which is Ed Kane. And during the pandemic,
Sorry, Conor, to interrupt you. I want to paint a picture for folks. Big Night Entertainment Group. This is a bigger umbrella. Can you describe it for folks, what it is?
Yeah, so Big Night Entertainment Group is the largest nightlife and hospitality group in the Northeast area. From restaurants to nightclubs. I think at one point in time there were 18 restaurant and nightlife venues, and then they started Card Vault, which is like, you get these sports trading cards, sports memorabilia. Tom Brady just recently bought into it, where now they're Card Vault by Tom Brady. There's now 8 of those stores, along with all of the aspects of restaurants, from arcade, Dave & Buster's style places to world-class nightclubs. And Big Night has a bunch of different kind of things that go under the Big Night umbrella. And what my aspect is now is I just run the health and wellness side of that. So with the support of this just monster company.
So health and wellness with restaurants and nightclubs, it seems a little disjointed. Kind of tie it together for me.
Well, I think that opinion is why it was so perfect, right? It's a huge gap in the industry, but it would make sense where if all people are pushing are, overconsumption of food and drinking, should probably be paired with some aspect of health and wellness, especially for the artists that are touring day in and day out, traveling around. I mean, your shelf life is only going to be so long if you're not taking care of yourself. And so from a health and wellness perspective, I was like, this is necessary. From the nightlife perspective, they were like, I don't think people are really going to be into it. And once we were able to merge those two, it then brought an aspect to Big Night Entertainment Group that no other hospitality company had.
So before we talk about how you merge these two ideas, can you explain how it is that there's so many celebrities kind of in the mix and that there's a mailing list with these celebrities?
So Big Night Entertainment Group, they book artists for their nightclubs, from hip hop artists to DJs to even people doing after parties that are just celebrities that are going to go there, and people will go because of that reason. Okay. Now, on that, they also sign artists. There's people that they market and promote, and they do booking for a bunch of different venues all around the US. So they have contacts with these people, and they are trusted sources where if they send a one-pager out to someone who's coming into town saying, what is your rider? Which is like, what food, drinks, and water do you want at the venue? Where do you want to go to dinner? What are the accommodations you need? Now added in there was, if you care about this health and wellness aspect, we have someone for you as well that is complimentary on your visit to Boston through Big Night Entertainment Group.
And what was the time period where this all started to happen? This was before COVID?
Yes, this is end of 2017, beginning of 2018.
Okay. So going into COVID, you've got a little bit of momentum with this, right? You're starting to get some clients, you're starting to get some recognition, some notoriety. Some of these celebrities, some of these musicians are saying, yeah, like, I want to work out with Conor. Let's do that.
I think it started really when, I had some people through Big Night that were coming to train with me in Boston, but Dylan hired me to be his trainer on tour. So we had a US bus tour with another artist. And when I went on this tour, Dylan wasn't like a huge drinker, wasn't partying every night, but did like to drink. And during this tour, he's like, hey, if I'm going to be paying you to be on the road with me, I want to be all in. Like, you manage my sleep schedule, you manage what I eat when I wake up, you manage the training, you do all of that stuff. And there were times when he wouldn't even go into the catering room. I would just go make his plate for him and bring it back. So he wasn't going to be distracted with, the desserts or what the necessary components of it that are, feeding all of the, the stage-hands that are there who aren't going to eat, the chicken and broccoli that is on like the, the little side table in there. So that was a big piece of it. And when he posted his results, like before and after photos, shirt off, about going into tour and then afterwards, that's when other artists, he has millions and millions of followers and a lot of them being other celebrities. That's when they took note to, wow, this is how touring can be. Didn't drink the entire tour. Maybe drank a couple of times during the year afterwards. And after our second tour together, where he decided to do the same thing, he realized he felt better. His creative was better. His relationships were better. Every aspect of his life was better without drinking. That now I think he's been sober for 3.5 years. And so people seeing that is where the momentum was coming from, where I was getting DMs on social media, phone calls, text messages from people coming into town, whether it was from a Big Night venue or not. They were now seeing this guy knows the world of, artists. You can't just, any trainer can give someone a workout so hard that they can't walk for a week. Like, you don't have to be a good trainer to do that. And I feel like too often people are like, this trainer's the best. Like, they crush you in workouts. It's like, okay, great. It doesn't take a lot to do that. I could have someone do 1,000 air squats and they're not going to be able to walk for a week. But can you give someone a workout that gets all the benefits of fitness, but also allows them to play on stage that night with a little bit more energy and allows them to train the following day? So that's when you become the trusted source in there of not just, hey, here's some, a-hole trainer who's going to crush you into the ground, but hey, here's someone who can actually take care of you. And you can really change someone's life with one meal and one workout. And I truly believe that. They're not going to get, you're not going to go from 280 pounds to 190 pounds after one meal and one workout. But what you can do is you can start now a habit of, I'm feeling better. This is how I got there. So I'm going to continue doing this. And for most people,
taking that first step and creating the new habit, that's so important. That's what you mean by it can change somebody's life, because it starts them on the right path.
Right. And most people's problems come from, if I were to just kind of blindly throw a dart at a board, would be overconsumption of liquid processed and refined carbohydrates. They're so readily available. It just does a number to your body. We talk about hyperinsulinemia and the deadly quartet of upper body obesity, hypertriglyceridemia, hypertension, all of these different things that are stemming from your response to eating all of these crappy foods. And so by definition, the cure to something would be, the elimination of a root cause. If by one meal you're not eating overprocessed carbohydrates and you're no longer sedentary by moving, well, now you've eliminated the root cause of what your issue is. So if you can continue doing that, that's a cure for whatever issues that you have going on. Now, it's obviously not as simple as that, and the discipline and consistency comes into it. But if it happens for one person, now the validity of it is there. And now it's just, am I able to do this?
Yeah. I mean, I think for any business, the best form of marketing, the most effective, is word of mouth. And you had that, but you had it on a large scale. Because this musician had a ton of followers and he's just posting real stuff that happened with you, right? So yeah, you've got some legitimacy, some credibility very early on. Okay, is it a good time in the story to hop ahead to what happened in COVID, or are we going to be missing something important if we do that?
No, we can go into that. But one thing I want to note on this too is that I don't know how swearing goes in your podcast, so I'm trying not to swear on this, but I don't want to be labeled as this, hey, Conor's a celebrity trainer. Like, I think that's like the worst and most cringy title to have, because I'm not a celebrity trainer. I'll train anyone willing to train. The cool part about doing it for someone with a large following, which I guess would somehow be a definition of a celebrity, is that reach. I take just as much pride and I have just as much happiness training, my buddy Trevor, who just recently lost 100 pounds since starting to train with me. I take more pride in that than maybe helping someone get a little bit fitter that's a celebrity. However, when they post about it, that then gives that right to so many more people, the outreach to so many people. And it's not going to be with me. It's going to be with someone else to seek out something where, hey, Diplo cares about health and wellness. He was out there training with this guy. Maybe I can look into it. I love his music and I love training, but if he's doing this, maybe I can do that too. That's the cool part about the celebrity side of things. Not so that I get a post on Instagram and so I get more followers and I get notoriety to the kids back home that are like, oh, Conor's made it. Like, that's stupid. I just want to get out there and say that first before we go into
I love it. Yeah. Okay. I appreciate you throwing that out there. Okay. So what happened in COVID?
So in COVID, as we all know, probably different aspects of the world, there were different things, but we had, Big Night Entertainment Group had a kind of a huge loss because of they weren't allowed to open, and the restaurants, they had to go through new guidelines every week because of all these different, things that were going on. The nightclubs were closed because they weren't serving food, so they couldn't have big gatherings of people. Now on that, as well as the fitness studios, especially these boutique fitness studios, they're struggling because they have to have, they're either closed down or they have to have 12 feet on each side of social distancing so people didn't get sick. And like, these are businesses that don't have anything to fall back on. It's like their clientele and who they were helping, that was their business. And as we know, and I think everyone can agree on, the people who were, in the best position to fight COVID were healthy people. So if we can then add in this aspect of health and wellness, we're removing this aspect of health and wellness from them, it's a negative on both sides of it. So Randy and Ed had this idea, hey, we have this gym, or we have these nightclubs that are empty and these gyms that can't open. What if we allow them to utilize the space, utilize the sound system to, put their spin bikes in there and run these classes? And that was the first part of it too. And I think that's what really encapsulates like club training, is that if you've been to kind of these cycle beat spin classes from Soul Cycle to Handlebar to, any of these high level spin classes, they try to make their studios a nightclub, loud music, lights. It's this electric atmosphere. However, they're not going to spend $14 million on a sound system because there's no ROI in it. They're not selling alcohol, bottle service and an experience where they can, sell a bottle of $30 Tito's for $400. And when they're able to be brought into that atmosphere, the world changed. People were like, this is incredible. And the trainers, they feel like they're these celebrities. They're going to be on stage and sharing the stage with all of their favorite singers who are creating the songs that they're putting on their playlist to have these spin classes. And then
were the musicians part of the classes, or just their music was part of the classes?
Well, at the time, their music was a part of the classes.
Okay.
You know, it's like, so Dylan Francis, who I'm training, is probably on any known spin instructor. They know who he is because his songs are on the playlist.
Okay.
And we have now from there had these guest appearances of DJs showing up to do these classes, which has been awesome. But that's what kind of stemmed, hey, during these downtimes when Big Night opened back up and people were allowed back in clubs, during these downtimes, well, why can't we have this going on? Why can't we add this in when the nightclub's closed on a Tuesday night? And that's kind of what created the next side of the business, where Big Night Fitness turned into, maybe it's not just the celebrity training that we have to offer, but maybe we can highlight fitness instructors in the same way we highlight artists, athletes, you know, these celebrities that are coming into town.
And is it just in the evenings, or, you know, I mean, you get a lot of downtime during the day. Obviously, a nightclub's not open during the day. Is there a market for utilizing the space for fitness classes during the day too?
Oh yeah, we've done sunrise yoga classes. We've done Pilates classes in the afternoon. There's, you know, charity event at 10 o'clock, and then at noon, we open up one of the bar venues and people will go there and get some post-drink cocktails. And it really just brings in a community of people. And to be honest with you, anyone who's been in the nightlife scene, they're probably thinking to themselves right now, like, that's not going to move the needle for a nightclub. But now when you're getting people that probably weren't going to go to a nightclub to begin with, now feel like they're a part of this community, and they realize, especially on big nights then, who, you know, they're not cutting costs to make a venue less expensive. They are unbelievable. They are beautiful. They are clean. Most people think, oh, well, this nightclub would be a disaster. If you saw it with the lights on, like, it's not a pretty sight. Well, that's not how Big Night runs things, Big Night Entertainment Group. So we're able to run classes morning, noon, evenings, you know, obviously not on a Friday or Saturday night. It's not going to rival a nightclub night. But yeah, at any point in time of the day, whenever we feel like there's a need, or whenever an instructor or a company says, hey, we want to try this out then. And we were able to throw a bunch of stuff at a wall and see what stuck. And the good and bad part of it was that most of it stuck. It's like, hey, people want to have this stuff. They don't want to have a gym membership to a nightclub, but they want these community events. They want an experience, which is what we're giving people with nightclub. So with the nightclub, but why can't we give it to them from a fitness aspect as well?
And so what does it look like today? What has it evolved to end of 2025 as we're recording this?
Oh, well, how much more time do we have left in this thing? It's so we're still running the events. We've done them now, expanded outside of just big night venues to we have outdoor venues. We do indoor classes. We do charity events on that side of it. We have a gym, which is where I'm at right now in Charlestown, Massachusetts, right across the bridge from one of our world-renowned nightlife venues called Big Night Live. And in this gym is where we have a sauna here. We have a cold tub, which is why I'm still kind of shaking probably from the first half of this interview. Not because I'm nervous, because I just spent way too much time in that thing. Where we train people, and then we allow people we have a bunch of different instructors that run their classes. You know, if they're a trainer at an Equinox, they can't run these big events with their clients at their gym. But if they want to come down here, and we have equipment, there's, you know, pull-up rigs, we have all sorts of Concept 2 machines, everything you'd need in a gym. We have these at this big space. So it expanded from just nightclubs to now more equipment-based fitness. We do on-demand videos for, you know, Encore Boston Harbor is a 5-star resort. It's a Wynn Encore casino that's right across the water. We do all the on-demand fitness for them. So if you go into a room and you click fitness, you can have 4 different trainers that do these 10-minute or less workout videos in room for people that want to move a little bit, but may not be, you know, the ones that are going to get up early and go down to the gym. We've expanded to fitness retreats, where if there's a yoga instructor who has a good following, we have partnerships with Celebration Travel, which is a sister company of Destination Weddings. And through Big Night, we can host these large fitness retreats where people are going down. They want to be around like-minded people, you know, this experience. where they're going down, they do yoga in the morning, and then there's all these extravagant things, whether you're hiking through a rainforest, doing zip lines, going on a boat cruise, doing all sorts of stuff now at properties out of the United States. And there's probably a few more things that, we may haven't touched on with run clubs and all sorts of different stuff, but really anything that people want to do that can create and enhance the community. That's what we're about.
Anything you can do to create enhanced community around fitness.
Correct. With Big Night Fitness.
Yeah.
Now, I have to give credit where credit is due that Ed and Randy do the same thing with Big Night Entertainment Group. They do anything to create and build this community around nightclubs, around restaurants, around every different aspect of it. And I think it comes from, our creative director, this guy, Scott. He understands that it's not a one-time thing. You don't want everyone to come to your venues once and have a great time. You want to give them a reason to come back. And that comes from community. That comes from being around like-minded people. And if people want fitness and not partying, then we should have a fitness aspect. Or if people want to follow skateboarding, then we should be able to highlight them as skateboarders or as, any of the, you name the category. So they run all that big stuff. This health and wellness aspect is just a small part of Big Night Entertainment Group, but it's everything from what I do in Big Night Fitness.
How do they or you go about creating that community? Like, I hear what you're saying on the fitness side of things, and it's sort of the fitness thread that brings people together, right? I want to get more fit. I'm already fit. I want to stay fit. That's part of my identity. So we bring those people together in a really amazing venue where the sound is pumping and, lights are going, and like, something you can't get in a typical gym. But I'm curious maybe how they do that on the restaurant and the club side of things. Like, to me, community is like there's a common thread between everyone. How are they establishing that thread? I think maybe is the root of the question I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, and I think it probably differs depending on the area you're going into. But, if I were to ask you if you wanted to get a college community to come do different events, what would that look like? I'd reach out to a college student to ask them what it would look like. But if I were to ask you, in your college days, what would have been the drawing force where you were like, oh, I'm definitely going to do this? Would it be, hey, someone said this is a college event? Or did the coolest person the guy or girl who was like in depth with it, they loved the college, they were a part of it, they were a part of everything from academic to sports and all of that stuff. They knew what was going on. And said they were probably the one who you were like, oh, if this person's doing it, then we need to do that. That's what Big Night does really well, is they find those people and they're able to highlight them to say, hey, what would you like to see here? What would be the event? Not saying, hey, we have all the answers. They have their ear to the ground on what communities are out there. Find the right people, highlight them, make them have it be authentic and genuine to what they want. And then that's what's going to bring the other people in the community. And you can do that with any community you want. It's just a matter of, it has to be genuine, and you have to be willing to listen to the people and not have all the answers, but listen to the people who are those trusted sources. If it's fashion, you want the people who are into fashion, not the people who say, hey, I'm a creative director and I did well at this, so I'm going to do all these other categories. Who are the people in it? Who are the heroes that can bring that authentic experience there? And that's how you create a community. It's just a matter of finding that and being able to give away a little bit of power.
That's cool. Are you aware of anybody else that is kind of merging these two worlds of fitness and nightlife? Have you had other peers, other models that you can learn from, or is this completely new?
I'm not going to sit here and say everything that we've done I've created. I'm a big fan of having someone you look up to and beg, borrow, and steal from them. Give them credit for when credit is due. But I think that since we've done this, we've seen a lot of stuff in the Boston area. I actually just worked out with a friend, Darren, who started what's called Ritual in Boston. And they have an outdoor venue called Park City. And every Saturday, he now manages other people that can go train, at this outdoor bar. But in the mornings, they do a big workout class, and then everyone hangs out. They have cold tubs from Sweat House. They have all of these different fitness brands that come around and do that. I think it's something that was needed and probably done on a small scale. But now when people understand and see the community aspect of it, I think it's spreading a lot. And I still take ideas from other people that have come to my events and done their own. But as far as seeing other people do it, I think people have done it really well. Believe it or not, Zumba, they used to do these cruises. So they would charter an entire cruise ship about people who probably would never go on a cruise, but they loved Zumba. And when you have so many people that can then create that community, we kind of copied that. And in 2019, myself, my old boss from Reebok Austin, and another guy who was I can't remember what he did for a living, but very, very successful. We started a company called Wad on the Waves, and we did the first ever CrossFit cruise. And that came from stealing ideas from Zumba, saying, hey, there's a community of these people. There's a community of CrossFit people that would probably never go on a cruise ship. But what if it was all their friends? What if in the morning, instead of these, drinking activities, we had, pull-up rigs on the pool deck, or we had Concept 2 rowers instead of, lounge chairs on the helicopter pad. We had sandbags and do all these different workouts and have seminars on fitness, but also bring the aspect of, partying and hanging out with your friends. What's really cool about a cruise. So we, kind of learned from other people doing that. And we ran a couple cruises. Unfortunately, COVID was not very friendly to our second, full cruise ship charter, where they actually ended up canceling all cruises. So it wasn't able to go out. But after the first one, it was an incredible experience. And I think I've learned a lot from that, from, Chris Browser, who is the CEO of the company, who came to Austin and I saying, I have this idea, but I'm not the fitness guy, but I know how business works and I can afford to charter an entire cruise ship. So you guys run the fitness side of it and we'll get people to go on it. So I guess, there's stuff to learn anywhere of any community, but I've learned a lot from that to bring into what Big Night Fitness is.
Conor, it sounds like you've got your hands in a whole bunch of different things. We haven't even talked about how you're a firefighter. There might be other things we've missed as well. How do you manage all these different things going on?
I think I mentioned it with what the other guys at Big Night do, what Ed and Randy do really well, which is finding someone who's really passionate about something and allow them to run with it. And something I really, really struggled with was delegating tasks, because I knew how I wanted something done. And for the most part, I wasn't very good with systems, so I was the only one to do it. Now, if I'm the only one to do something, it's impossible for me to do more than one thing at a time. So the biggest piece for me has been being able to delegate tasks, being able to find someone who's passionate about it, and maybe giving them something before they were ready for it, as what happened to me. Not expecting things to go poorly, but expecting people to develop and learn from their mistakes rather than, me not allowing them to make mistakes because I step in because I need it done this way. So I think having trust and having a great team and just managing expectations about what someone wants and how they can get there, it's really having a team behind it. I wouldn't be able to do really any of these things if it wasn't for, one, the team that trusts me to do this, and then for me to take that trust and experience and do that with my team.
What's the future of Big Night Fitness look like? Where are you guys going?
Oh boy. Well, this facility we're in now, we're finalizing a partnership deal with another affiliate or gym where we're actually going to turn this into a public affiliate. So instead of it just being, me and my friends and different people in town for Big Night, we're going to give everyone that same level of care and training to open this as a small gym. We're going to continue to expand on our digital platform with a couple of different partnerships we have from the on-demand side of things, and whether that be in-room hotels, people working out, or getting people the right knowledge and basis to warm up for activities, whether it be on a ski mountain or before going on a long run, or to get a general person from sitting on the couch to running a 5K. And we have a whole creative team that is unbelievable with photo and video that supports all the stuff in fitness. So I think expanding those is a big piece of it. And then also allowing support for other people that want to do the same thing, for other nightclub areas, for different nightlife groups to say, hey, how are you doing this? And then, now
Almost like a
with,
consulting group where you sort of help them set up their own system,
yeah,
their own program.
absolutely. Instead of being like, oh, don't take our ideas, like, hey, no one has a trademark on fitness. People can work out anywhere they want. And instead of fighting against what I think is an incredible idea, which came from Ed and Randy, they were the ones who grabbed me because we had worked together to say, hey, we want to do this thing, and help other people do the same. And I think just continuing to grow the community and still have a small percentage of it open for new ideas. What if the best of Big Night Fitness hasn't even shown up yet?
That is the daily goal of every entrepreneur, that the best has not happened yet. That's what gets us out of bed, right?
Yeah. And if you're not open to that, if you're so single focused on one thing, you might miss something. But if I've learned anything from Ed and Randy, it's that, sometimes something works really well on one day, and sometimes you have to completely pivot and figure out something else. But if they weren't able to do that, they'd miss out on this, enormous opportunity of this card vault, which they started during the pandemic, doing these like card vault breaks where, I didn't think people even traded sports cards anymore, but it's $1 billion business. And when they started doing that, because they had recording studios and they had people that were passionate about it, and now the managing partner for that is, in charge of this now multi-million-dollar company that they started because this guy was passionate about it and there was an opportunity. If they just stuck with nightlife and restaurants, this would not have been on their table. And now it's a huge part of the business. And it just goes to show that, you have to be confident in what you're doing, but humble enough to know that you don't know everything.
Mm-hmm. So in the parts of your story that we've talked about today so far, Conor, there have been ups and downs, mostly ups. Like mostly what we've talked about so far is how a lot of things have worked really well. I'd like to kind of flip that around and talk about something that didn't work so well, a real big challenge that you had to overcome in your life, how you got through that and what you learned.
Oh man, there's a lot of them. That's for sure. Even in Big Night Fitness, the only reason why I know people don't want a gym membership to a nightclub is because we had weekly class offerings at a nightclub, and they started off really hot and then it kind of tailed off. It lost its lust because it's only cool when it's cool, rather than, and when you're fighting to have 4 or 5 people show up to your class when 100 people showed up 3 weeks prior, you're like, well, what's the issue here? So seeing that and being able to remove classes from the schedule is a tough thing. The Watt on the Waves cruise was amazing, but in 2020, when the pandemic shut it down, and, there's this whole issue of we had all this stuff planned. We had a year's worth of this planned and now it's gone, and it still hasn't come back yet. Maybe I don't figure that as a loss, but I think why I'm able to adapt and deal with this stuff so much is from my experience in the Navy. We had touched on it just a little bit about going into Navy Special Warfare. It's a tough training pipeline. You have to be 100% committed to this. And as a 17, 18-year-old making this decision that this is what you're going to do with your life, I had some issues with my right elbow that presented issues with combat diving. And if you don't have a jump dive physical, you can't operate in special operations. So after years of, training in a pipeline, to have it come back after you've achieved this goal that you thought was what you're going to do the rest of your life. I had a surgery and then went into a dive office, and essentially the dive officers were like, hey, you're not cleared. You are not going to be cleared to dive ever again. And without that, imagine now you're telling this to a 20-year-old that committed their whole life to this job. And now I can't do this job anymore. What am I going to do? I wasn't going to go to college. Everything was for this. My high school, I would be that kid in class to say, hey, what do I have to do to pass this class? It's the only thing that, it's the only thing that counts is that I passed. I didn't care about grades or scores or anything about that. I cared about, being a Navy SEAL and operating and doing that job. And I was going to do it the rest of my life. And then when that was taken away, it's like, well, but I did all this to get there. Why can't I, what's the purpose? And I went outside of the Navy. I got civilian opinions to try to clear me and go against the Navy. And, when I ended up reluctantly saying, hey, there's nothing I can do here, I got out of the Navy and I thought the world owed me something. I had such a negative attitude that, I wanted people to feel bad for me, that I did all of this stuff. I accomplished the impossible. And now here I am, that it's all taken away from me. And I met a guy, Chris Irwin. I had actually moved to the Virgin Islands, and I moved there not because I had this this dream of starting a CrossFit affiliate, the first one in the Virgin Islands, and having all this awesome stuff happen that happened afterwards. It's because I didn't really give myself very many other options. I was like, well, I have friends down here. I'll just go drink beers and be a bartender somewhere and then just kind of waste my life away. I met this guy, Chris Irwin, who was he had just gotten off of active duty after 14 years in the SEAL teams. He had worked himself up to the highest level, which from the SEAL teams, you can screen to go into what's called DevGru or SEAL Team Developmental Group, also known as SEAL Team 6. And he had just come off active duty. He took a job down there with this kind of sales job, offered him a ton of money, moved his family down to the Virgin Islands, and they loved CrossFit too. And I ended up coming across him. We actually had an interesting meeting our first time, from me being this guy who wanted people to feel sorry for him, and then meeting someone who did the job from the top down and didn't expect anything from the world. It was just a job for him. And he was like a silent mentor for me because he never told me what to do. Never told me not to feel sorry for myself, never told me any of this stuff. But the way that he lived his life and seeing what he had been through and how he still looks at the world was something I wanted to emulate. So it wasn't really until that time that I started turning things around, like, hey, you still have a lot of stuff going for you. Like, it's not over yet. Just because that you put all your eggs into one basket and it didn't work out, it's not over. And you're not going to be that person who feels sorry for you the rest of your life. And I had some friends that they kind of stuck by my side, and not in the, hey man, we support you no matter what. But when I moved to St. Thomas, that were like, hey man, you're worth more than what you're saying to go be some like bartender. I actually had one friend, Marino, that, was having a going away party, and he was the only one who came up to me and he was like, hey, I don't think this is the right move for you. You're meant for a whole lot more than this. And I don't want to hear from you unless you're doing something worth telling me. I don't want to hear about a crazy night you had getting drinks or going to do X, Y, Z. I don't want to hear about that because I think it's bullshit. I think that when you're finally doing something where you're following a career and a passion to live up to your potential, that's when I want to hear from you. And it was humbling to hear from someone who I thought was my friend. And at the time you're like, that's a rude thing to say. But that was one of those times when I was like, he was right. And I try to look back, if I always want to be in a place where I look back a year from now and I think, man, I would have never believed I'd be in this spot. And it doesn't always have to be from a financial standpoint or from a business standpoint, but even a mental standpoint of who I want to be. And, there's always struggles that have come in and out of that. But I think that by having everything that you wanted taken away from you and then finding a way to win and finding a will to succeed anyways was the biggest and best thing that's ever happened to me. As much as, if you were to go back and say, hey, the rest of this life isn't going to be here, but you can, operate in the teams. Still not sure I'd go, hey, I want this other life. I'd be like, oh, that's still what I wanted to do. But if it's not there, you can't dwell on it. You can't, some things are out of your control and you fight hard for it, but there's always another opportunity. And that goes from every aspect of, from if you're homeless, if you are a drug addict, if you are create a business, invest a bunch of money, have your friends invest a bunch of stuff and it doesn't work out for you. It's like, it's not over. And it can be a failure, but it can also be a learning experience where you can be, now a 36-year-old and think, I've done everything I wanted to in life and more, and I'm still living it. And I'm still curious as to what's next.
So there's some fun stuff to unpack in that. I appreciate you sharing all of it. The first part of what you talked about to me is something we've talked about a lot on this show. You went through an identity crisis, right? Like your identity was tied up and you're going to be a Navy SEAL. That's everything that you were working towards, all the fitness. I just want to pass this class in school. I don't care about, I just need to get from here to the Navy so I become a SEAL. And then when that's taken away, all those years of your identity being tied up in something, that rug is ripped out from underneath you and you feel lost, discombobulated. Like, I knew where I fit into the world, my place in all of this before, and now it's taken away from me. And I'm just like, my head doesn't feel right anymore. And what I think was really cool about, your experience there in the Virgin Islands was this Navy SEAL that you met who became, I think the words that you used were a silent mentor. And as you said that, I'm like, I don't have any idea what that means. I know what a silent partner is, and I thought, this is really cool. This is a guy that wasn't telling you things directly. He was just a living example of the way to carry yourself through the world. And when I heard you say that, I'd be curious to, hear from listeners how it hit them. But I'm like, I can take that into my life. Like so many times, whether it's with my kids or my employees, whatever it is, I am like, wagging my finger. This is the way that you should do it. I've been through this before. Let me just show you the way, and do exactly as I tell you to. But there's so much power in being able to, like your friend, just be the living example of the way to carry yourself through the world.
Yeah, it was at the time I didn't really realize it until spending a little bit more time away from him. And I was like, I act in the way that he did, that he didn't, he wasn't consciously being like, do this or do that. And that was even over the last couple of years. I tried to think of things as, who do I look up to the most? And what qualities and traits do they have? And how can I be more like them? And, I'm not a mental health expert, but, I was working with a woman from the VA on just some mental health stuff. It wasn't that I was like in this huge rut, but something where I'm like, I still want to improve. And she gave me this sheet. It's from this like ACT program, ACT. It's an acronym for something that I don't know, but it essentially had this list of categories, and it said, list how you feel from 1 to 10 on the importance of it. Family, friends, business, morals, religion, all of this stuff that's down there. And you circle where you want that to be, where you want your care or effort level to be. The next piece of paper was the exact same sheet of paper, and it was circle how you feel like you've done at each one of these categories this week. And it's like, oh man, I put family up here, or, reaching out, and I haven't done anything about that. And the closer you can get, and it doesn't matter where they need to be. It doesn't matter. The first sheet, it doesn't matter. If you're like, hey, I just don't have a lot of care for my family, but I want to spend time with my friends or any of that, I truly believe that the closer those two sheets can be to matching up, the happier you're going to be. It's intention and then putting behavior behind the intention. And when I saw where I was acting relative to the people that I most looked up to, like my dad, for instance, it was like, well, that's not really who I want to be. But if I really looked at it from a objective standpoint, not just where I wanted things to be, but where I was putting effort, I wasn't there. And when I started making those changes, I can tell you right now, I'm the happiest I've ever been in my entire life. And it's because I'm just behaving in the same way that I want to behave. I'm seeing myself as of what I want to see myself, rather than, putting all these different categories as family, a 10, and all this stuff, and then not acting in that way. But my intention was to have that. So I think that's just a huge part of it. And when you meet people like that, it's like, find out what they're doing and do what they're doing.
What's your superpower, Conor?
Gosh. My superpower is not having a superpower. It's trying to believe that I have one. No, I don't know. I think probably empathy would be my superpower. It's from putting all my eggs in one basket and failing, and realizing that, everyone else is going through something. Everyone else has certain things that they struggle with, whether they are a celebrity or whether they're, someone who were, pulling up on a medical call from a drug overdose. It's the empathy that you can't always judge someone from where they're at in a moment. And I'm still an emotional guy. Like, I cry at kids' movies. I think that the more you can try to find where someone is coming from, just the happier you're going to be in life. Or you're going to go through the life just pissed off all the time because people aren't acting the same way that you are, or they don't believe the same things that you do. So I think just being able to get along with people and see that not other people's opinions are evil, even if they're completely different than yours. There's probably some common ground to have, and being able to kind of swallow your pride a little bit to get to understand where that is something that's definitely improved my life. But I wish I could teleport. That'd be ideal. If I could have any superpower, I would teleport.
Teleportation.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, is that going to go on your list of here's my goal of where I want to be, and then ask yourself the question, what have you done to move towards that goal?
Well, I've watched Back to the Future a bunch of times, so I'm on the right path.
I like it. I've just got one more question for you today, Conor. But before I ask it, I want to knock out a few things. First of all, if you want to get in touch with Conor Murphy, there are a few options for you here. Website, bignightfitness.com. His personal email address is Conor, and that's with one N, CONOR at bignight.com. Conor at bignight.com. You can find them on socials at Big Night Fitness. And Conor, do I have your personal one here correct? Is there a T in there, or did I mistype that? Okay, so it's
that's my middle initial, Conor T. Murphy.
At Conor T. Murphy. And remember, that's Conor with one N, at Conor T. Murphy. And we'll have links, to all that in the show notes for folks. Also, as a reminder, if you want to get more employees access to benefits that won't hurt them financially and carries a financial upside for the company, reach out to addbackbenefits.com. Finally, if you'll take just a moment to leave us a comment or a review on your favorite podcast app, we will be forever grateful to you. All right, last question for you, Conor. You and I reconnect 1 year from today, and you're celebrating something big. What's that big thing you hope to be celebrating 1 year from now?
Well, I think it'll be a couple of things. First is that, with this contract about opening this gym up to being an affiliate, I don't care the revenue or how big or how many members we have. I want to be celebrating the changes that people have made, the success stories of the people in the gym, as well as just continued career. I'm relatively early as a Boston firefighter. So just by learning the job and finding confidence in that. But I think the biggest thing that I would like to have if we were to meet in a year would be the same curiosity to want to continue doing things that maybe I don't know anything about, to continue to be open to maybe I don't have the idea. Maybe this gym in a year, it actually turns into something that I never thought possible. But one thing that I never want to do in my life is lose curiosity.
I love that. Conor T. Murphy from Big Night Fitness. I want to be the first to thank you for sharing both your time and your story with us today. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me on here. And again, I know I try not to say I don't like to talk about myself, but here we go again of an hour plus of me doing it. So thank you for the opportunity to that. And hopefully the story helps someone else to realize that there's always more. There's always more, whether you're happy or you're sad, there's always something that you can do, and just keep going.
100%. Folks, that's a wrap on another episode of the Inspired Stories podcast. Thanks for learning with us today.